Amen. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, they're starting with verse number 4. You know, light isn't just light. Light is actually made up of 7 different colors that comprise light. And those 7 different colors are Roy G. Biv: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. But of course, we don't see that everywhere we look. We just see light. And by the way, you don't actually see anything. What you see is light reflected off of any surface. And any surface is made up of some sort of combination of those component colors. But those component colors are actually what light is. But sometimes it is possible for light to be broken down, to be separated, so that you actually see the different colors of the rainbow instead of just seeing light. And of course, one thing that does that is moisture. Moisture has a way of making the different colors of light visible. Hence, you have the rainbow after it rains. But you also have a crystal. And a crystal can have the ability, if you take light, shine it into the crystal, some crystals are able to break down light into their different colors. And so what Paul does in these verses that we're just starting to get into this evening is he takes the light of love and he takes it through a prism. He takes it through a crystal that breaks down light into its different colors, into its different component parts, into its different qualities that comprise what love is. So we see the colors of love, we see the qualities of love, and the first one is this: love is patient. Love is patient. And the way it saith it in the King James Version is this: charity suffereth long. So that's the first thing we need to nail down, we need to understand, we need to let it into the depths of our souls, that real, true love suffereth long. So here's what that means. It means bad things happening to you does not affect your love. Nothing bad happening to you is able to touch your love. It means that those bad things do not affect the love that you have, because your love gives you patience, because love suffereth long. Robert Ingersoll was a famous 19th century atheist. And what he would sometimes do is he would stop right in the middle of one of his lectures on atheism, and out of nowhere he would say this: God, if you exist, then I will give you 5 minutes to strike me dead. And then he would use the fact that he was not struck dead as proof that God must not exist. Theodore Parker, a famous Christian apologist of the same time period, wrote of him saying that these words: "Did the gentleman honestly think that he could exhaust the patience of the eternal God in only 5 minutes?" You see, God thinks long term. God does not live in the short term, because God is patient. You and I need to be like God. Don't just live in the short term in which you might have a certain impulse. Have the perspective of living in the long term. Now, because love is the context here, this is obviously, therefore, all about patience with individuals. as opposed to patience with circumstances. Both would definitely be a matter of patience. But think of it this way, though. Being patient with circumstances, as wonderful of a thing as that is for you to be, is useless if you are not also patient with individuals. It is easier to erupt at a person than it is to erupt solely because of a circumstance. The reason why it's easier to erupt is because that person is a visible agent that is standing right in front of you at that very moment. But every time that we erupt for one reason. We forget our love. We forget our love in that moment. We forget our love because we find ourselves suddenly living in the short term. You want to know what real love is? I'm going to tell you what real love is. Real love is putting up with, how can I say this? Real love is putting up with the unput up withable. That's what real love is. To put up with the unput up withable. It reminds me of a television commercial from the 80s. And in this television commercial, you had a very ugly woman. Now, this ugly woman was actually a man dressed up like a woman, portraying a very ugly woman. So, this ugly woman looked in the mirror. She was so ugly that when she looked in the mirror shattered. She got in an elevator with a guy, and when he looked at her, the lens in his glasses shattered. That's how ugly she is. And the elevator doors then opened to a watch store. And at that watch store, when those elevator doors opened and she just looked into that store, the glass counter shattered and the lens of all the watches shattered. And then the elevator door closed. But there was one watch whose lens did not shatter. Timex. It takes a licking and keeps on ticking. Now, here's my point. Can it be said of your love, like Timex claims about their watches, can it be said of your love that your love takes a licking and keeps right on ticking? Can it be said that nothing gets to your love? There's an expression that we like to use, and it goes something like this. That guy presses my buttons. That guy really presses my buttons. How easy is it to press your buttons? How pressable are your buttons? Can it be said that it's hard to press your buttons? Or can it be said it takes nothing to press your buttons? Let me give you this illustration. So, stoplight turns green. The person in the car in front of you hasn't noticed that the light has now turned green. How many seconds does he get before he gets the horn? How many seconds does he get? 3? Okay, that's reasonable. That's pretty patient, I guess. You see, now obviously you do need to let him know at some point. But it's just an example of our impatience. Now, if you can't be patient with your spouse, if you cannot be patient with your child, then how could you ever hope to have patience with an enemy? An enemy that you would be tempted to hate, right? An enemy that it would be natural for you to hate. But Jesus said to love your enemy. And this says love is patient. So that means you're patient with your enemy. How could you ever hope to be patient with someone who hates you? How could you ever hope to be genuinely patient with someone who is legitimately, sincerely against you if you cannot be patient with those who love you? Have you ever heard a preacher tell a story and you're like, okay, I heard a yes to that, thanks. Have you ever heard a preacher tell a story and you said, that story is so perfectly ironic or such a perfect illustration, I have doubts that actually happened just like that? Have you ever heard a preacher tell a story and it's just so spot on perfect, you're like, is that an actual story? Did that ever actually happen? I admit, I've heard preachers tell stories in which I have doubts. And the story I'm about to tell you, I heard from a pastor who told this regarding him and his own son. And I have to admit, it's one of those stories in which I'm like, that is so perfect, I don't think that actually happened. But he says it did, so I believe him. Okay, so this pastor that I had at one time, he had a small kid, and his small kid attended a Christian school. And in Christian schools, you know, sometimes they have verse quizzes, in which they have to memorize a verse. And then come the quiz time, they write down their verse, and for every word they get wrong, that's a point off, okay? They have to write it down word for word. Now, kids tend to cram at the last minute, and so as the dad is driving his son to school in the morning, they're memorizing those Bible verses on the drive to school for the sake of the kid's quiz. And guess what it is? It's the first few verses of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, have you ever tried to help a child memorize word for word a few Bible verses? I want you to know it is indeed an exercise in patience, because you go through it phrase by phrase, and just when you think, now we can go back to the beginning and he'll have it all down, we've gone over it 12 times, this time he's sure to get it, sure enough, they don't. You know, okay? And so they got to here in verse 4, suffereth long. Okay, Dad, it suffereth long. But then when they go back and go through verses 1 through 3, they get to verse 4. What is it again? It suffereth long. It suffereth long. Now back to the beginning. Back to the beginning again. They get to verse 4. And it... it suffereth long. Why can't you get this down? It suffereth long. What's the matter with you? Okay. And I'm like, what? That is so perfect. So you see, he didn't even realize. It's almost like David and not realizing he's the guy. You know what I'm saying? But that's a story he told. But you see, that story illustrates the point. We tend to excuse our lack of love in the short term because we always get it back in the long term, right? We come to our senses. We erupt. We lose our cool. Our patience goes out the window, but we get our patience back the next minute. But here's the thing about God. God never loses track of the long term. God never loses perspective. God doesn't lose his love for you one moment, but that's okay, because he remembers it the next moment. That is what we tend to do, but it's not what God does. And you remember what we said this morning about God's love, that if we're going to praise God for his love and his patience towards us, then what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Jesus said in Matthew 5:39, "But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also." That would be an illustration of love, charity, suffereth long. I could retaliate right now. I could fight back right now. But for me to lose my patience and lose track of the long term is for me to forget my love. Now, it is one thing to not harm an enemy, and it is something else. It is something else to treat an enemy as a friend. There's a difference. There's a difference between my not treating an enemy like an enemy versus my treating my enemy like a friend. So that brings us to the second quality of love. Not only is it patient, but it then takes the next step as well. Love is kind. See, if God were patient, but not at all kind, if he were solely patient, not kind, then that would solely mean he puts off destroying us till later. But God doesn't just simply put off destroying us. He saves us. He's patient to give us time to respond to his kindness. Because he's not solely interested in putting off our destruction. He also wants to actually save us. So here is one way to think about it. Patience tends to be not doing something. Kindness then tends to be doing something. See that? You see that? You got one, but then you move on to the other. It's one thing for me to be patient with you, and there's something else for me to be kind to you on top of my patience. So my patience is me not knocking your teeth out, but then the kindness is me doing something good unto you. Like this Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan wasn't just simply patient or merciful, but rather he was kind. And kind goes even beyond patience to being literally helpful. Kind means meeting a need. Generosity, something extra and utterly unexpected. See, here's the thing about love. Love doesn't wait for an occasion. Love doesn't wait to get drafted. That's duty. That's just duty. Love goes beyond duty. Duty is when you're in a position where you almost have to do some nice thing, because everyone's going to think you're a jerk if you don't do some nice thing. That's when you get drafted. And that's not love. Love doesn't wait to get drafted. Love volunteers. When was the last time you performed a completely unexpected act of kindness? The word random would often be a word that would be involved in the kind of thing I mean. So, when was the last time you performed a random act of kindness? Was it that person's birthday? No. Was it that person's anniversary? No. Had that person just suffered some terrible tragedy? No. Had that person just achieved some great feat? No. So why'd you be nice if you didn't have to be, right? But you were nice. You did some random wonderful thing because you wanted to, purely out of love. Now, you want to know what's not love? I want to tell you what's not love. I want to tell you what is not kindness, and that is this: helping somebody, but doing so only after you let out a great big S-I-G-H. Sigh. Oh, I have a story that has stuck with me my whole life since it happened. It's going to stick with me until the day I die. I was a small boy with my parents, and we were visiting a church. I mean, I say small boy. I don't know exactly how small I was, so I don't want you to get the wrong idea, because I'm running, in the story, I'm running around by myself. So I don't know, 8, 9, I don't know. But anyway, I'm a kid, okay? I'm a kid, and I'm at a church with my mom and dad, and I have to go to the bathroom. And I've never been to this church before in my life. We're visiting this church. We only went there that one time. And I remember that there was a group of men standing around talking, and little old kid me walked up to that group of guys, that group of men, wearing ties and dressed all nice, talking to each other and having a good old time. And then I just said, "Where's the bathroom?" And the guy said, "It's right." Give me some direction. And I went and I tried to find it. And I came back and said, "I'm sorry, sir, I can't find it." He tried to give me direction again to where the bathroom was. And I went and tried to find it, and again, I couldn't find it. I came back to the guy again, saying that I can't find the bathroom. And I'll just never forget exactly what that guy did. He went like this. "Oh! Oh, okay, come on, I'll show you." He showed me where the bathroom was after letting out this nice big groan, this sigh of utter annoyance. He might as well have said, "You stupid little kid, what's the matter with you? You dumb or something?" I mean, he might as well have said that. And so, just want you to know something. There is no reward in heaven for anything you did after you sighed about it. There is no reward in heaven for anything you did following a sigh. Then the third, charity envieth not. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it is the first negative description of love. If you are jealous of a person, you lack love for that person. That's all there is to it. That's what it says. Jesus said this in Matthew chapter 20, verse 15. "Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Is thine eye evil because I am good? Is thine eye evil because I am good?" Meaning you give someone an evil eye because God has blessed them in some way, and they have something that you wish God had blessed you with. Thine eye is evil because God is good. You are literally resenting God's goodness to them. When we are jealous of someone, that is what we are doing. We are resenting someone else's good fortune. We are resenting what somebody else has. It's not our place to be jealous. It is our place to be thankful. And the reason why it is our place to be thankful rather than jealous could not be more simple, because God owes none of us anything. Now, jealousy appears in two different stages, and the one leads directly into the next. So the first form of jealousy is discontentment with what you have. None of us, think about this, are any of us ever discontent or jealous over something that nobody has? That's my question. If there is a thing that literally no person on earth has that, it's a situation no one is in, or it doesn't exist, are any of us discontent because we don't have it, or jealous? No, we are not. We're only discontent or jealous because somebody else does have it. Think about that. We are discontent over what we don't have, but other people do have. That makes it envy. We need to understand discontentment. Discontentment is more than just a casual desire for something. Like if someone said to you, "Would you like to have such and such?" And you said, "Yeah, that'd be nice." Does that mean you're discontent because you don't have it? No. You ask that person a question. "Would you like to have it?" Sure, you'd like to have it, okay? That's not discontentment. But the first form of jealousy, which is an actual discontentment over not having what other people have, I feel like my life isn't as good as it should be, as if God owes me something because I don't have what somebody else has. Just that unhappiness by itself, that's the first form of jealousy. But then the second form of jealousy is what I would call malicious jealousy. You resent the fact that anybody has that which you do not have. In other words, because you cannot rise to them, you want them to come down to where you are, and you resent them for having it. We've all been there. Seen a, really nice car you would like to have. You dream about, what if I had a car like that? And then that thought pops in your head, I'd like to see that guy get a big dent in that car. I really would. Now, why? Why do we have thoughts like, what did that guy even do to you? You don't even know that guy. Why would a thought like that pop in our heads? Solely because he has it and we don't. How can you hope to be a person who truly loves your enemies if you can't even love people who never did anything to you? But we don't want anyone to have what we don't have. And so there was an example of jealousy in the Bible. If I can't have it, I don't want anyone to have it. Remember the false mother with King Solomon? The two women who were claiming that the baby was their baby. And Solomon said, well, there's only one way to settle this, cut the baby in half. Give one half to each mom. And the false mother was willing to go along with that. Why was the false mother willing to go along with that? Because if I can't have my baby, at least my friend won't have her baby either. Now let's talk about a couple of examples of folks who are not jealous versus someone who was. I'll give you the first one. Jonathan versus King Saul, right? There you have an example of one being jealous and the other being in a position where it'd be easy to be jealous and yet not being jealous. The fact that the kingdom was going to go to David and no longer be under the line of Saul after Saul would die made Saul nothing but jealous to where he wanted to kill David. And yet Jonathan, who had every earthly reason to be jealous of David, hey, that throne was supposed to be mine one day. Instead, he wasn't jealous at all of David because he loved David. And another example would be Eliezer versus Ishmael. One was jealous and the other was not. See, before Isaac came along, Eliezer was looking at the possibility of being Abraham's heir. And yet, he was never jealous of Isaac. But then you have Ishmael. Ishmael was extremely jealous of Isaac and hated Isaac. So you have Paul, who writes in Philippians chapter 1 that those who hated Paul while he was in prison were out preaching Christ in order to try to make Paul jealous. That's what he says. Philippians 1:16, the one preached Christ of contention, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds. See, they don't like me, so they're trying to see ministerial success without me, so I'll be jealous of their success. Jealous of the fact that it's them seeing the success and not me. But it didn't work on Paul at all. Verse 18, Paul writes, what then? Notwithstanding every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, and I therein do rejoice, yea, and will rejoice. See, he wasn't jealous. The reason he wasn't jealous at all, he was happy. The reason he was happy instead of jealous, he was happy for them. The people who hated Paul are seeing people get saved. He's happy for them. He's happy for them because he has no, what's that word, hard feelings? Yeah, no hard feelings, because Paul loved both the people who needed to be saved, right, as well as these ministers trying to make him jealous. And then a couple of other just easy pickings when it comes to examples of jealousy. Satan, that would be a pretty easy one, right? Satan, right? Wanted to be God, jealous of God. So when you're jealous, you're following in Satan's footsteps. And then the Corinthians themselves. The Corinthians were an example of jealousy. They were all jealous of somebody else's spiritual gift. They were all jealous of somebody else's role in the church. Everybody wanted to be somebody else. Everybody wanted to have somebody else's job. Everyone wanted whatever was being deemed the most glamorous or highfalutin. And then you have the other side of jealousy. Okay, what? You have the other side of jealousy. What's the other side of jealousy? The other side of jealousy is this: wanting others to be jealous of us. That's the other side of jealousy. When we want for somebody else to be jealous of us. Now, because then it says this is the next color of love: charity vaunteth not itself. Okay, now I would understand if you look at that and say, I don't know what that means. But here's what it means: bragging. That's what it means. Bragging. Like, you ever heard somebody say something like this? Teasing, taunting. Hopefully they were joking, but maybe not. Hey, look at me. Look at this. Look at this thing I got. Look at this thing I can do. What's the matter? Jealous? You ever heard somebody say something like, what's the matter, huh? Jealous? Now, hopefully nobody is that on the nose about it, but sometimes people can be. Hey, look at my watch, huh? What's the matter? Jealous? But here's the thing about bragging. I want you to think about this. We are all crazy, and here's how we're all crazy. We absolutely hate it when other people do it, and yet we think people like it when we do it. Is that not true? We absolutely hate it when anybody else does it, but then the moment you're in the mood to do it, you suddenly see yourself as an exception. Oh, I'm not bragging. We excuse ourselves, paint ourselves in a different light. You want to know what bragging is? It was an illustration or definition. Begging for praise. Begging for praise. That is what bragging is. Nobody owes you any praise. Nobody owes you any praise. It's like money. Nobody owes you any. Asking for praise is as bold as walking up and asking somebody for their money. That's a bold thing to do because nobody owes it to you. So, try not to bring yourself up in the conversation too much. Right? Try not to talk about yourself too much. Okay. There is a big exception to this. If you just had a baby, if you just had a baby, you can brag on your baby, show them pictures of your baby, but only for 2 months. Only for 2 months, okay? Then you have to knock it off, right? Okay. Watch how much you bring up yourself in a conversation. Ask about the other person. Always downplay your achievements just a little bit. 2 Corinthians 10:17 through 18, Paul writes, "But he that glorieth, let him glory in the Lord. For not he that commendeth himself is approved, but whom the Lord commendeth." Here's what that means. You're not interested in giving yourself a pat on the back. You're not interested in anyone else giving you a pat on the back. The only thing that matters to you is that one day Christ pats you on the back. That's the only thing that matters to you. And until that day comes, all you're going to be about is patting Christ back, is exalting Christ. See, because here's the thing about Christ. It's always safe territory to brag on Christ. He is the one who is actually worthy of all of the praise in the conversation. Nobody else is. And here's the other thing about bragging on Jesus. It's actually in the self-interest of others. So not only is it okay, it is good. While at the very same time, even bragging on Christ, do watch your heart and be careful. Remembering this, knowing Him doesn't make you any better. Knowing Him doesn't make you any better. We should be bold for Christ, but our boldness must be accompanied with extra humility. We brag with our mouth, but there is another way in which we brag. The mouth is not the only way in which we brag. This is true. We brag with our actions. We brag with our actions by always wanting to outdo everybody else. Acting like all of life is one giant contest. Everything has to be a contest, and man, you're going to carry home the first place trophy. You don't have to be the best at everything. So anytime you're striving to be the best at something, always ask yourself this question. Does it serve any practical purpose? There may be some occasions in life in which you're trying to do such and such better than anyone else is doing. There may be some occasions in life in which that is appropriate. But you have to ask yourself the question, does it serve any actual practical purpose, or are you just trying to impress? If the only thing you're trying to do is impress, then you are bragging. If the only thing you're trying to do is get them to see you, not to love Christ more, not to help them, but to see you or to be impressed with you, that is not love. Because love vaunteth not itself. And so tonight we've looked at these opening colors or qualities of love. So, I'm going to ask you the question, how is your love measuring up to what true love looks like? Is your love something that suffereth long and is kind and is not envious and vaunteth not itself? Is that the state of your heart? Or does your love need to be better than what it is? As we stand to our feet for this time of invitation, you come forward and kneel at this